Sammy Wilson.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Chairman. I don't know if there are too many people across the country today sitting in front of their TV screens watching this debate, but I doubt if there are many likely to be doing so. But if there are, I think that many of them will be bemused at the fact we have spent now over 3 hours wrangling about whether or not it is a good thing that the government is putting into legislation that it is prepared to spend money across the United Kingdom for economic development, improving infrastructure, supporting cultural activities, supporting activities and programmes relating to sport, supporting international educational training activities, and supporting educational training activities and exchanges within the United Kingdom. It's bizarre that we think that this, in some way, is bad, that the government is plotting, conniving, and cynically trying to destroy parts of the United Kingdom and the devolution settlement by doing such a thing. The fact of the matter is this, that as far as England, or Scotland, Northern Ireland and Wales, the devolved administrations will still have significant spending powers over all of those things. They will get their allocation under the Barnett formula as they've always done. They will have the freedom to make the decisions to spend that money, and they will be able to set their own priorities. And even when it comes to the money which the government will decide to spend centrally, does anybody really believe that some minister in Westminster is going to look at, say, Northern Ireland and say, there is something that the devolved administration has never thought of, doesn't even have it as a priority, has never even suggested it, but by Jove, we are going to spend the money in Northern Ireland on that project. It's totally bizarre to think that that is how money which is hard raised in the first place would ever be spent. Of course, cognizance will have to be given to, first of all, what is in the national interest, and secondly, what local administrations believe is important to be delivered on the ground in their own constituencies and their own areas. One of the most odd arguments I've heard today is from the member for Foyle, who's not here, and I don't like talking about people when they're not here, but since he hasn't stayed from a contribution, I must make the point that somehow or other he wants clause 46 removed because it is in danger of bringing violence to Northern Ireland. It's going to break the peace agreement. It's going to tear up the Good Friday Agreement. The government spending money on these things, or proposing to spend money on these things, somehow or other is going to destroy the peace in Northern Ireland. Now, I've got to say, I know some people in this House have fairly thin arguments, and it usually means that when the thin arguments, especially anything with Brexit or the withdrawal agreement, they usually talk about violence in Northern Ireland. But this is taking it a bit far, and I will take it.
I thank the member for giving way. The member will share my shock and dismay at the comments made by the member for Foyle in this debate earlier in cheerleading threats from some US politicians like Peter King, a known IRA sympathiser, to scupper a UK-US trade deal to the detriment of his constituents, my constituents, and indeed everyone within the United Kingdom. Would the member also agree with me that those who promote the narrative of threats to violence, destabilising the peace process, or a threat to devolution have yet to tell us where these threats are actually coming from, and indeed condemn them?
Well, I thank my colleague for her intervention, and of course she's hit the nail on the head. We have all these threats. I have heard them from all of the benches around during the debate on this bill, and I have yet to hear how, first of all, anything in this bill drives, to use the words of the member for Foyle, a coach and horses through the Belfast Agreement. I'd have thought if it drives a coach and horses through the Belfast Agreement, he would have given us one example. Coach and horses would indicate to me there's probably about 100 examples, but he didn't even give one example to this House, and of course we get to the usual threats. My concern, and I wanted to really talk to our amendment on this, Madam Deputy Chairman, my concern is that the provision that is made in this bill to give financial assistance for all of the areas which I've outlined, the danger is that it might apply in England, it might apply in Scotland, it might apply in Wales, but it can't apply in Northern Ireland. Because, of course, financial assistance, and indeed a whole range of other assistances, whether it's tax, fiscal policy, industrial policy, research and development, and everything else, falls under the heading of state aid. Now, the government has realised, rather belatedly, even though they were warned, that the state aid provisions, as contained in the withdrawal agreement under the Northern Ireland Protocol, don't only apply to Northern Ireland. They apply to the whole of the United Kingdom, according to Article 10 of the withdrawal of the Northern Ireland Protocol. And they've sought to remedy that. They've sought to remedy it, and of course they've got a lot of criticism for it, by saying that they're not going to apply it to England, Scotland and Wales. However, the Minister has made it quite clear in the letter which he has sent around explaining this legislation that to ensure there is no legal confusion about the fact that while Northern Ireland will remain subject to EU state aid regime for the duration of the protocol, Great Britain will not be subject to the EU rules in this area. And the reason for our amendment this evening is to ensure that the exclusion which there is in this bill for Northern Ireland, and therefore will mean that Northern Ireland will not be able to benefit from this financial assistance, that is removed. And I can't understand why the government believes that it is important, especially if these infrastructure projects are to benefit the whole of the United Kingdom and to address national issues, how the government can then say, but by the way, we are consciously making a decision to exclude Northern Ireland from the safeguards that would be. Because make no doubt about it, that under the withdrawal agreement, if this bill hadn't been brought forward, the whole of the United Kingdom would have been subject to having to declare any assistance that was given in any form to industries. The Commission would have made a judgment as to whether or not that was lawful. And if the government persisted, the European Court of Justice, at the end of the day, would make a decision as to whether or not that support could be applied. That's a stark fact. That's one of the reasons why the government has had to take the steps which it has taken. But it has left Northern Ireland out of that provision, and the Minister has been quite explicit in that, and of course the bill is quite explicit in that. And that has two effects. The impact is, and don't forget, we're talking here about the internal market of the United Kingdom. There are two impacts of that. The first impact is this, that Northern Ireland and businesses in Northern Ireland will be left unprotected from predatory behaviour or unfair competition from other countries in the EU, and especially the Irish Republic. We have got good experience. I mean, people talk about cooperation between Northern Ireland and the Irish Republic. The fact of the matter is, when it comes to looking for investment, and it comes to looking for jobs, and it comes to looking for promoting their economy, they're not cooperating with us. They're not collaborators. They're competitors. And they have proved this time and time again. We don't have any transatlantic flights now between Belfast International Airport and North America, even though North America is a very important market for us and a very important source of investment. And connectivity is all important in that kind of context. And why do we not? Because the Irish government has promoted flights, has used every fiscal device, every means possible to them to promote Dublin Airport. When it comes to hospitality industry, and I could go through lots of examples here today, but time is short. So that's the first impact, that Northern Ireland businesses will not have any means of protection. Because if the government, and even if the Northern Ireland executive spots an issue and says we want to have some support for our industries, that is challengeable in the European, in the Commission and in the courts, which, by the way, we will have no political representation in or no judicial representation in.
Oh, was on give way?
I will give it.
Thank you for giving way. Two of the sectors in my constituency across the whole of Northern Ireland are very important, as the agri-food sector, also the fisheries sector. We've had past experience of the Republic of Ireland's intentions towards the fishing sector. Very important that we have control of that and we can grow that industry. But also equally important is our agri-food sector, which in my constituency provides some 2,500 jobs. If we don't have that protection through this internal markets bill, but also through our clause 47, does he feel that we will be at disadvantage, not just with the other countries, but with the Republic of Ireland in particular?
Well, of course, the withdrawal agreement, the whole withdrawal agreement, disadvantages the economy of Northern Ireland. And some aspects have been tinkered with in this bill, but many have been left undone. But let me come to the second impact. And this refers to the internal market of the United Kingdom. Since, as a result of this bill, it will be possible for the government to give support to industries in GB, but not capable of giving such support to businesses in Northern Ireland. You could have a scenario where a firm located in Northern Ireland cannot benefit from the financial assistance which is available in the rest of the United Kingdom, and finds itself in a position where it is actually advantageous to relocate from Northern Ireland, where it can't get assistance, to other parts of the GB where it can get assistance. And so much about this bill being a bill to protect the internal market of the United Kingdom. By having a provision for financial aid, by excluding Northern Ireland from the provisions on ignoring the state aid provisions in the withdrawal agreement, we could actually distort investment across the United Kingdom to the detriment of Northern Ireland. Now, for those reasons, I believe that the amendment which we have put forward is reasonable, it's fair, it meets the requirements and the objectives of this bill, i.e. to ensure that the whole of the United Kingdom benefits from the prosperity which will come when we leave the European Union, and that the internal market of the United Kingdom will not be distorted. And it's one of the reasons why I believe that the government should include Northern Ireland in the provisions which are in clause 42 and 43, and that this House should give support to the amendment in the name of my colleagues.